This morning's session, we'll be looking at how work-life balance helps to support employees' mental health. And we'll be looking at how our team's well-being is connected with your organization's being able to achieve its business purposes. We'll learn about how we can spot the signs in our colleagues who may be struggling with their mental well-being as well. And very importantly, in this sort of digital era where there's so much hybrid and remote working, we'll also be looking at connectivity within our teams to reduce the risk of isolation and loneliness. My name is Derek Tong. I'm from the Knowledge Content team at the CIPD, and it's with real pleasure for me to introduce to you our speakers today, James Proctor and Louise Johnston, from the organization Phase 3, who are leading providers of management and services for HR, payroll, and finance. James is our Chief Operating Officer at Phase 3, and he has, as his title implies, a leading role in connecting the service delivery and operations at that organization. James is also an author of a lot of resources and content to support HR, payroll, and professional services. Louise, in the meantime, has a bridging function at Phase 3. She is the head of customer success and works between customers and clients to make sure that they are well supported on their journey and that the projects deliver with success to the highest standard possible. So how this session is going to work is we'll hear from James and Louise, and then we'll leave about 10 minutes so that we can circle back and ask some questions. If in the meantime, anything that James and Louise have to say triggers a thought or a question, can I encourage you to please make use of the conference platform to get those questions in, and we'll circle back and address them right at the end. So if you're ready,
Absolutely.
We'll hand over to you, James and Louise.
Yes, thank you, Derek. So, morning everybody, I'm James. Just to tell you a little bit more about myself, as Derek said, I'm the COO at Phase 3. One of the things that I am really passionate about in my personal life is mental health. So, I was a Samaritan for 7 years. I left after being director of a local branch. I'm mental health first aid trained, safe talk trained, and so everything we do at Phase 3, there's a golden thread of care. And the first things that our employees see when they join Phase 3 is we want to make sure that they put their home life and families first, their colleagues second, and then clients third. That's our priority. And Louise?
I'm Louise Johnston, and I'm Head of Customer Success here at Phase 3. So we are a technology company, but in my spare time, I'm actually a yoga and meditation teacher as well. So obviously working in tech and knowing that everything focuses so heavily now on tech, we really try here at Phase 3 to bring in more wellbeing practices to make sure that our employees are looked after. It really goes back to that ethos of that simple method that you look after your employees and they will look after your business for you. So whilst I oversee delivery, I'm also a big advocate for wellbeing at work too.
Great, thank you. So just to run through what we're going to cover in this session today, the first thing is around supporting your team's well-being and how that can help to achieve the financial objectives of the business, because those two things aren't mutually exclusive. We'll also look at how to spot the signs that someone might be struggling and some tips around that, especially in a digital world, and how to ensure the connectivity of staff as well, looking at the risk of loneliness and isolation. But we'll also talk about the right to disconnect, which is so important as well. And how to enforce a work-life balance. You know, we want to look at this from the work perspective and the life perspective, and how we as employers can facilitate that support in a work-life balance.
So let's have a quick look at how we define employee well-being, but also the benefits that that has for you as an organisation as well. So for me, it's really about taking that step back to your employer and employee relationship. It really is going to help, if you look after people's well-being, to have your employees have a sense of belonging within your organisation. After all, an engaged and committed workforce is only going to enhance things for your organisation as well. So that's ultimately going to lead to a faster time to productivity. And I mean this in a sense of feeling good and feeling proud about the work that you do. So again, just by looking after people in the appropriate way and giving them that sense of belonging, that you're an organisation that really cares about your staff, it means they'll feel good about their work and they'll feel good about their achievements and understand the contribution that they give to your organisation. Naturally, that's going to have an increase in job satisfaction and morale. So if you create an enjoyable environment for everybody to work in, and that safe environment as well, you're going to have greater connectivity, a greater team working balance, and ultimately that's going to impact your organisational performance too. In turn, that will then give you a positive brand for you as an employer. We believe that people are so much more likely to promote you as an organisation and show that you care about your staff. That is essentially your brand. So in turn, they're going to be sharing that with their friends, their family, and their professional network as well. So they're much more likely to encourage people to work with your organisation if they have that sense that they are looked after. So for us, that shared experience is only going to enhance the culture of the organisation, and that in turn has such value for you as business leaders too.
Okay, so one of the things that we are really passionate about at Phase 3 and we talk about a lot is this principle of profit, culture, and putting people before profit. So it's a fundamental principle that emphasizes well-being, dignity, and the rights of the individual against the balance of financial gain. So this isn't to say profit is a dirty word. I'm a COO. My CEO wouldn't like it if I did think that, let's be honest. We're not a non-for-profit organization. But it's looking at how we can maximize the health and well-being of our employees, and in particular around making sure that they want to stay with the organization and they feel safe. Placing the needs of the employees at the forefront of what we do ultimately ensures long-term relationships with those employees. We have a very low turnover on the back of that. And ultimately for our customers, that means that the employees get to build those long-term relationships with customers, and we're not seeing a constant churn of consultants or payroll teams working with the individual areas. It also builds long-term relationships, trust, and ultimately enables us to sustain success. And it supports corporate social responsibility as well, bringing people into the workforce and looking after them. But we also want to make sure that we have recognition that's going to promote employee well-being as well. We know that recognition is so important, and it's not just through salaries, but it's through saying thank you. We use a HCM application, and every week on our weekly update, we respond to the entire organization with all the recognition that's been shared across the organization from customers and from peers against each other. And as I've said, profit isn't inherently bad. It's not a dirty word, and it's not incompatible. We need to strike a balance between well-being, and so I'll go through some things that I would expect to see on the P&L. But before that, let's look at the costs of getting this wrong. So the CBI said that last year, the cost of absence in terms of the sick pay, the overtime, the replacement staff in the UK was 18 billion. Now that equates to about £554 per employee. And the HSE said that on average, the average person has 5.1 days a year of lost productivity due to sickness. Now that might not be 5.1 days off sick, it might be somebody who's practicing presenteeism, but their productivity is reduced. So when we take those figures into account, if we can look at a way of spending less than £554 to achieve a wellbeing strategy, then hopefully it helps to balance the books. In terms of reducing the cost, it isn't all about spending more. You know, that's not what we're here to tell you. And we don't sell any solution that is a silver bullet to help well-being. That's not what we do. We help people get the most out of their technology. So there are lots of things that you can do with the technology that you already have, but some of the ways that you can help to promote well-being is, first of all, promote well-being. And that might seem like a simple statement, but there are lots of organizations that don't necessarily have well-being as one of their golden thread targets in the organization. So calling that out in business plans and in your North Star statement. You know, we say we want to be a responsible, dependable organization for our team and for our customers. You know, that's in our mission statement. We also know that as employers, we have to consider flexible working requests. But sometimes that feels like a burden rather than a way to help our employees. there's been a huge program around the 4-day working week. We know that that's something that's popular. Now, interestingly, we surveyed our team, and 93% of them said, we don't want a 4-day working week. We offer a benefit of unlimited paid annual leave at our organisation. And our employees said, actually, that's more beneficial because it means I can take the time back when I need to. And I recognise I might be busier sometimes, but I can take the time back. But looking at things like term time only, another flexible working opportunity. And ultimately what we try and do is say, you are an adult. You can choose when you work, as long as you get the work done, and as long as your client and colleague needs are met, there is nothing that we need to legislate that says you must be at your desk between 9 and 5, because who says that 4 till 5 every day is the best time to reply to your emails when you're in the wrong headspace? Now, some of the things that you can do that would hit the P&L, we're talking about financial objectives. As a small organisation with just under 100 employees, we're about to breach that threshold. Finding flexible benefit providers can be quite difficult. So we looked across the market and found one that will help us both now but also when we grow. So we use an organisation called Perkbox. Anybody heard of that? Yeah, a few nods. So that includes an EAP for us. So that includes wellbeing apps, it includes free counselling sessions, and it costs £3.50 per employee per month. When you stack that against the £554, it includes Perkbox Medical, which means that our employees get access to a doctor 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and they can have appointments online. Fantastic tool, and it's something that has really helped us promote sort of well-being in the workplace. And we know that we've had lots of referrals to the EAP, and that's supported employees, and our sickness absence is significantly lower than the average of 5.1 days. Now, this one might seem a bit counterintuitive, but sick pay. This is a contentious issue. We know in other countries sick pay is much better than our £90+ a week SSP that we pay to employees. We pay occupational sick pay. Lots of employers we know do. We know that the public sector in particular pay occupational sick pay. In some instances, it's seen as an entitlement, so I'm going to take my sick entitlement this period. Turning that on its head a little bit, what we try and promote is, if we pay you to be sick, we hope that you will take the opportunity to have rest and come back refreshed. So it's not unlimited, it's not 6 months, but it's an entitlement there to help promote the well-being of the person, to say, actually, if I'm unwell, take the time off and then come back rested. What we don't want, especially when people are working from home, is people laying in bed with the laptop, pretending to be working, when actually we know that they're not probably as productive and it's not helping them get better. There are other things as well. Mental health first aid training. That's really important in terms of organisations. I know lots of people in this room probably will be mental health first aiders themselves as well. That's not necessarily a cost as well. Local authorities have lots of grants that you can apply for as organisations to fund mental health first aid training in the organisation. And there are lots of wellbeing platforms. I'm going to cover one a little bit later in another slide, but some of them offer free trials and platforms that can be installed on the individual's device and just ask them questions regularly. And don't forget, as I said, well-being needs to be promoted. So there are lots of free apps and tools that you can use. So if you're going to write anything down in this session, write these few down. The first one is Headspace. The second one is Work Life Central. Now, Work Life Central is specifically aimed at the workplace in terms of mental health and well-being. Every Mind Matters, that was started by the Prince's Trust, and that encourages people to use the Couch to 5K app, for example, and get out there physically as well as mentally. There's the BetterHelp app. And one of the podcasts I listen to, they talk about BetterHelp. This is a wellbeing app where people can access a counsellor for once a week. And they talked on this podcast that it really struck me around how normalised it has become now for people to talk about being in therapy. Online dating used to be a thing that people talked about as this weird thing. Now, actually, online dating is just dating. And BetterHelp, therapy, it's just like going to the gym. We talk about our therapy memberships like we do our gym memberships.
So we know that hybrid and remote working is here to stay. So as James said, it's crucial that we really do promote well-being as part of your organisation's strategy. It's so easy to miss the normal signs from human interaction when you're working remotely. that people might be struggling. So of course it's important that you promote those apps like Calm, Headspace, and allow people that time within their working day to actually take a step back. It's so common for people to have Teams meeting after Teams meeting. And we actually made a bit of a joke of it because James said about dating. The day almost feels like a speed dating session. You've had all of these half-hour meetings, and there's no time in the middle of those to actually take a breath, take a step back, and even get the work done that you meant to do after that meeting anyway. So a really simple strategy there. I've gone completely off-piste. But when we have our meetings, we've actually reduced those to 45 minutes. So then after that 45 minutes is up, you've got 15 minutes then to either, take a comfort break, write up your notes, get away from the screen. Because like we say, you do miss those cues when you work remotely that somebody might be struggling. So the signs that people might show are something like a decreased responsiveness in emails. We employ humans at the end of the day. So if you notice that somebody's started to drop, they used to reply quite quickly to Teams messages, or they used to reply within a certain amount of time to emails. If you notice that that's started to slip back, it might be that they're actually struggling with working from home. We know that there's so many benefits for remote working, but actually it means that we're less likely to take care of ourselves. There seemed to be this sort of image that because you're working from home, you have to be online for that solid 8-hour working day. But that's not actually the case. It's important that you open up those channels so that people can interact with each other and get that normal interaction that you might if you were in the office. It's so easy to miss some of these cues because there's also things like, sorry, I know you're ready to go, changes in behaviour. If you notice somebody's being slightly more irritable, or even if they're complaining more, it could be that they're struggling with their well-being. If you notice that struggle, I think it's important that you approach it with empathy, because the signs might be a decrease in productivity, less attention to detail. Now, I'm not saying that you march in and say you're not responding, something's going on, what's wrong? But we need to use the softer side of these platforms, perhaps taking time away from the screen to have walk and talks with your employees, maybe having informal Teams meetings so that you can open up those channels to talk to each other as humans and identify if somebody is struggling.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of those symptoms that you talk about there, actually, we might consider as people quiet quitting. That's a term that people are using a lot. And actually, we need to have the conversation, is this a well-being issue, or is somebody actually just disengaged and looking to move on? So I'm not going to linger on this slide for too long, but I think a lot of people in the room will have seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs or hierarchy of motivations. And we just need to make the point that as the work-life balance, we aren't here as employers to help with all 5 stages of the hierarchy. What we want to be able to do is provide those lower levels, because we know that as people, as humans, we need the lower levels to be in place for us to self-actualize in the higher levels. That's the way that the theory goes. So we're here to provide the workplace, the salary, the ability to have a roof over your head, and then by providing the well-being tools and giving people the headspace, that means that then in their home life they can focus on the love, the esteem, and the self-actualization. And the way that we can promote that through the workplace is through things such as recognition and giving employees a sense of belonging in the organization as well. So in terms of connectivity, I think this is, again, Louise has mentioned a few things around this, but we have very technical people in our team, and they like to use systems and tech. Sometimes we need to use tech to stop the tech, and that's interesting. Think of your screen time alert on your phone. But what I would say is look at what tools you have available. Now, if you subscribe to Office 365, you've probably got Yammer included in that. That's a really simple connectivity tool that you can use. There are things like Workplace by Facebook. They're not necessarily high cost, but they're just the opportunity for people to share comments, share feelings, share what they're doing in the organization, and ask for potential help or to share an experience that they might have had. We've tried them all, and all I would say is when you land on one of those platforms, invest time and effort into it, because if not, if you just leave it to the sort of the end employee team, it won't necessarily be well managed. So have somebody that facilitates that and keeps polls going and pulse surveys, etc. Work out what works well and invest in it. That's the point there. Don't underestimate the social. Now, this isn't just going out for drinks after work. What I mean by social is sometimes we need to tell employees, you have permission as remote workers to just get together in a Cafe Nero and have a meeting if you want. You know, it might not be covered in the expenses policy, but we are huge fans of that. And Louise in particular is a huge advocate. We work all over the UK. There's a cluster of people who live close to Louise, and they get together in a Regis or a WeWork. They don't work in the same team. They don't really overlap in terms of what they do, but just having conversations about phase 3, our clients, and what they're doing is really helpful to them and beneficial. Collaboration portals, it's as simple as creating a Teams channel. That's all that needs to happen. You can have an internal Teams channel for the entire organization. People can be liking, commenting. If you don't use Teams, you might use Slack, similar kind of principle. And what I would say in terms of updates and communications is make sure that they are consistent. So we have a weekly update that goes out lunchtime every Monday. We have a monthly update that goes out on the last day of every month in terms of the last working day. Regular, consistent communications means that people engage with them more, and it means that they actually log in and read them, and that helps them understand what's going on in the organization, and that's where we drive all of our wellbeing messages as well. And lastly, pulse surveys and sentiment. Do pulse surveys and find out what the employees are actually feeling. Now, there is a few examples here, and we are running out of time, so I will go through them quickly. I'll focus on Wellbot. So Wellbot, again, not somebody we're associated with, we're a customer of them. £1 per employee per month, free for the first 3 months. It's a little app that sits on your desktop on your computer. Every morning it says, how are you feeling today? It reminds you to have regular breaks, takes over your screen and gives you a screen break occasionally, asks you if you've done enough movement, gives you some exercises to do, and it uses AI. So if people start to develop some sort of poorer sentiment or say that actually they're struggling, it starts to refer them on to tools and resources that might help, like those free apps or the EAP. And from a pulse survey perspective, this is ours. Quite happy to share this. Again, consistency. We ask 5 questions every single month. One of them is, I'm supported at work. So I feel supported at work by my line manager and my colleagues. That's the orange one at the top. And I'm really proud that that's pretty much consistently the #1 highest scoring answer from our team every month. They feel supported at work, they're able to do their job.
So I wanted to share with you a few tips on how to look after people's digital well-being. I'm probably showing my age a bit here, but when my career first started in payroll, we still used to use red books and colour-coded pens. So I can actually remember the office when I wasn't glued to the screen the whole time. And that made me start to think about digital natives, that they are going to be reliant on technology their entire working lives. And of course, it's the future for us as well. So as HR leaders, I think it's crucial that we take care of people's digital well-being to limit the harmful effects of the tech. So it's about using the softer side of the platforms that you've got. It can be get-togethers on Teams, quizzes, collaborations, you could do yoga and well-being through Teams. You might even open up like an informal coffee chat. We can have virtual water cooler chats open in the background that people can just join if they're feeling isolated. And that's a really good way to get other people across different departments talking to each other and working together too. It's also crucial for me that we start to limit non-essential communication and have a bit of an understanding of the value of other people's time. So respect if somebody is on Do Not Disturb. Now, I'm guilty of this. I'll see Do Not Disturb and then I'll pick up the phone and text that person anyway. Apologies, James. But it's really important that actually we don't do that. People need time to focus. If you've got your Teams and your Outlook linked to your phone, not only are you going to have the alert coming through your laptop or your PC, you get it through the phone as well. So you've got that constant connection and people have the right to disconnect for a certain period. So there's other ways you can do that by turning off the alerts, or on Microsoft Viva, you can actually delay when an email is sent. So we offer flexible working, but what we noticed, and it is of course a trial and error when it comes to well-being, is that if somebody was choosing to send an email later at night, others were feeling more pressure to reply straight away. So we can use those tools to make sure that they're scheduled and that people feel that they only have to reply when it suits them. So allow that switch off.
Thanks, Louise. And finally, that's the work piece. This is the life piece now. So first of all, have a wellbeing strategy and ask your employees what they would benefit from being included in that wellbeing strategy. We also encourage personal responsibility. So we are not the parents of the people that work for us. We are here to offer our duty of care, but we need them to take responsibility for using the things that we provide, for reading the communications. And so we have that as part of our employee charter. Manager and leaders, take an example. Don't glorify overworking. I have caring responsibilities, so sometimes I will reply late at night, but my signature tells people I don't expect you to reply during this time. This is just when I choose to work. Really simple tool that you can use. And finally, on absence, we've mentioned this already, but try flipping the KPI on its head and measure how little time people are taking off rather than how much productivity you're losing. Focus on those people who aren't getting the rest breaks and encourage them to take time and book holidays throughout the rest of the year. We've got just under 5 minutes now for any questions. Sorry, we went over a bit there, Derek.
That's all right. That's all right. Thank you, James. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you.
Yeah, as James has said, we've got a couple of minutes left for questions. So if you've got one question burning for James and Louise, please put your hand up. There'll be mics available for you. One here and one down the front. James, Louise, if I could just pick up something that came through online quickly. You know, you talk about having a well-being culture in the organization being so important. And culture is something that's notoriously difficult to create or budge. You know, what would you recommend as a first step?
I think it's important to lead by example. So obviously James and I do sit on the senior leadership team of the organisation. So we lead by example. We actually put in our diaries that we are having that space for a break. We say that we need to respect each other's time. If somebody's on do not disturb them. So I think it's really crucial that you actually do this from the top and you have those conversations with your employees as well. As James said, we're not the parents, but you want people to feel encouraged and motivated to look after their well-being. If they look after themselves, then they'll look after your business as well. So it really is people first.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for that. It was really good. I want to touch base on flexible working. So I'm an advocate for it. I do flexible working myself. It's really beneficial on my well-being. But as a company, we only offer it on a case-by-case basis because we've got people in sales or customer service. So it's departmental. What can we offer them to accommodate their needs and make sure that whilst they can't flex and work, if there's anything else that we can offer?
Yeah, I think there's lots of things that you can do, and ultimately it becomes the responsibility of the team to work together. So we have, we call it treating you like an adult. That means that we know that our parents, for example, might start a little bit later, but then at the end of the day, in the sales team, for example, they're the people that might do the tender responses, because that's something that's not customer facing and it just requires, so there are always ways that you can find between a team, and the first thing to do is have a bit of a focus group with that team and say, how could we help you collectively? Now, 4-day weeks are notoriously sort of requested. Everybody wants the Friday and the Monday, you know, we'll want a long weekend. But actually we've encouraged people to say, you can have a 4-day week if you want, but we need to stagger when that happens so there's always cover. And I think there's usually an element of people's role that isn't going to be customer facing, even if you work in a customer service department, things like CPD or your ongoing e-learning, things like that. They're the kind of things that if people take that time back through the day, they could do in the evenings and around then. So there's always something that you can offer, but I would definitely say use the technology as well, because just encouraging that little bit of downtime, those rest breaks, especially where you are in a role that's very screen focused, is so important. And often the meetings that you have, Louise mentioned it, they could do the one-to-ones while they're out and about having a walk. They could be walking to the shop to pick up the milk. It doesn't make any difference in terms of the quality of the conversation. So really simple little things.
Thank you. Pick up one.
Hi, thank you. So you spoke about boundaries, and you spoke, and from an employer perspective, it's a lot of employees. And I know you advocate for trust in terms of trusting your employees to do what they need to do to, deliver their output. But what are the boundaries that you actually need to set as an organization to ensure that people are not taking advantage of your kindness to the employees?
Yeah, it's a really important question. So we obviously, part of our organisation is professional services. So that is timesheets, essentially. So we are measuring our team based on their outputs in terms of the work that they do for clients and client satisfaction. So we're not Big Brother, we don't record every minute that you sit at the desk, but you are set objectives. We have a 90-day plan, which links from our 5-year business plan, that says to every single person, this is what we'll be doing in the next quarter, and their objectives are based on that. Objectives are measured in every one-to-one around, are we on track, are we under track? And then from there, we have the conversation around whether or not they need to be doing more, or perhaps less if they're over achieving, and when we recognise they need to take time back. And it's linked to our annual leave policy as well. So as I mentioned, it's unlimited. So that's something that could really easily be taken advantage of. But with every request, we're having the conversation with the person. If you've just had a really big project that's taken you a little bit more time than you should really be spending at work, then we expect and encourage you to take that time back. If you're a person who's done very little delivery, we will be asking the question, do you feel it's appropriate for you to take that time back? And it's those honest two-way conversations that really are part of the culture. You have to be able to comfortably challenge and expect to be challenged in return in terms of those kind of requests. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you for that, James. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time. There are a couple of really good questions here from the audience. Where can we find you if we want to come and talk to you?
We're downstairs on stand F10, so just near the main entrance. You walk in, hi, Bob's in front of you. We're just to the right of it. So yeah, we'll be around there for the next few hours.
Fantastic. So James Proctor, Louise Johnston. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.